Paul Mooney, rest in peace. Man, I was trying to stay away from rest in peace um, stuff on my channel because for a while I was doing a lot of them. But this definitely has to go on here. Paul Mooney was a prolific and amazing comedian to me because it wasn't just so much that he made us laugh. He made us think while laughing, and you could not just write him off as just kind of like, oh yeah, he's funny, blah blah blah. Nah, he was very conscious with his comedy. You cannot go wrong with Mr. Mooney. Very conscious comedian. And seriously, when you hear him talk, it's like you're laughing, but it's almost like you can't just laugh. It's like more than food for thought. It's like he had an anchor in your thought. It was like basically at times it could be either it's like that kind of like ha 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 punch in the stomach. Like you remember when yeah, it's like that's the way his comedy. I mean, Chino XL the rapper talked about punch rhyming. He was like that, like Paul was like that being a comedian. When I first saw Paul Mooney, it was in the mid 80s when I was a little kid watching Robert Townsend's Partners in Crime. I think that's what it was called. I think it was on HBO or back in like the mid to late 80s. And I enjoyed that, it was so cool. That's where I first saw the Wayans brothers as well. And I forgot who else was on there, but it was a very great show, man. Robert Townsend did a great job putting it together, and he had Paul Mooney come on. And Paul Mooney, as a little kid hearing that, I to be honest, I didn't laugh when I was like, why, dude, this dude is brutal, man. He is just like no holds barred, man. Like he was just like totally brutal, like just showing no mercy on the audience. And no matter, when he talked about racial issues, it was just like, whoa. But the thing is, as I grew, I began to understand why, and I've always, I was like, whoa, yeah, this is it. This needs to have. I mean, this is the kind of comedy that I like because Paul was a teacher. He wasn't just a comedian, and you couldn't just laugh. It's funny thinking about it. Um, I think people got accustomed to laughing at racism because of all the Norman Lear tandem stuff, which I found out later. Paul wrote a lot of that stuff out. Like he wrote a lot for those shows. He wrote for Good Times. He wrote for Sanford and Son, and he's done so much work. And even when you think about like just even that when it was like that was when a lot of that comedy stuff was conscious. But then you had a segment of people that they would use you know Archie Bunker as an excuse. Oh, he's racist in an Archie Bunker way, ha ha ha. No, you couldn't really do that with Paul. And even when you look at like the earlier Archie Bunker stuff, you couldn't just, for me, watching stuff like that coming up, it's something, to know that like as much as yeah, I'll say that I don't even talk about Norman Lear a lot in this video, but a lot of those TV shows were very important for that time because they were some of the first, if not the first, TV shows that addressed stuff like racism and all that. Um, and I'm glad Paul Mooney had a part in that. Now later on, people just kind of started thinking it was so caricature, but the thing about Paul Mooney, he kept up that same energy. It was more like, dude, you know what? This is what, I mean, he was the heart of like a lot of that stuff. This is what we're writing about. We're writing about this for change. And when you got Paul live, it was no chaser. With the TV shows, there was a bit of a chase to it, like, um, but with Paul, he was like 100 proof, man. Like, man, I love all the stand up stuff that I've ever seen by him. I dig, like, um, some people get mad at the Latin one, but I thought he was speaking truth to power, man. Like, and I'm glad he said what he did because he was just basically putting that all into a perspective that most people outside don't really know about, you know. But those that know know, and there's so much stuff to say about Paul Mooney, man. I mean, I mentioned that he wrote for like shows like Sanford and Son. That dude wrote for Richard Pryor. He wrote even some of the stuff that he did live, let alone the show. Was with the guys from In Living Color. Of course, I'm sure him and the Wayans brothers go way back because I just mentioned I saw them on that Partners in Crime special, with Robert Townsend. But man, he, was so conscious. I mean, shoot, he ended up in Hidden Colors because, Tariq knew what was up with Paul. He knew Paul had a lot of knowledge when it came to stuff like racism and all that. And coming from a comedic angle, but still not, you could not characterize Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney could not be a character at all. He was basically a comedian, but he was like a straight up like revolutionary in that sense of just like, hey dude, yeah, you're gonna laugh, but you're gonna learn. You gonna learn, dude, straight up. He hit you right where it counted, man. And that's what I liked about Paul Mooney as a comedian, and there will never be another comedian like him, I'm glad that there's a reason that there are people like Dave Chappelle and cats like him. But Paul, not to take away from Dave or compare him to it, and Dave would probably say this too. Paul is just like, man, nobody could ever freaking, you can't, there's never another Paul Mooney, man. He is like, I think, the best comedian as far as like just, when we talk about social issues and race and all that, there's people that come to mind. Dave Chappelle, of course, Eddie Griffin, and I'm sure DL, but like those two come to mind right away. But definitely like Paul Mooney was the first, in my opinion, to really put that stuff on the line and really bring up these issues that America tried to ignore. I like the fact that he used comedy to do it, and he used it in a sense to basically not disguise or hide or entertain, but he used it to bring it out there to the point where you couldn't just laugh. Yeah, you're gonna laugh, but at the same time, I'm gonna hit you right in the face with the truth, and he did. Shout out to Paul Mooney, memory eternal. There's so much stuff that I could say about this brother. Man, may you rest in peace, man. Memory eternal, Paul Mooney.